Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is something of like a very short video I actually just wanted to make because while it's still worth being talked about, I kind of wanted to address the issue of a certain viral video game called Palworld, which to the rest of the world's knowledge is basically a blatant Pokemon ripoff with unfortunately some very interesting modifications. Well, some of the designs of the characters look different. So apparently weapons are involved in this, and now there's apparently a mod in which you can actually play as like Ash Ketchum or Misty or Brock, or even have any of the Pokemon like modeled to be exactly in the game. So it's basically I think it's like something. I think the game is like something like Fortnite Pokemon, but Fortnite, and this has sparked a lot of controversy online, mostly because a lot of Palworld has been used using NFTs and artificial intelligence, as opposed to actually paying voice actors, programmers, animators. The consensus seems to be is that this is a game that has been essentially designed from the ground up without the usage of actual human beings. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has had quite a lot of people very, very concerned about the status of video games, or it could even be digital media generally, where all of a sudden humans will no longer need to be necessary in the eyes of corporations. They won't need to be paid. We can literally build a machine or a digital artificial intelligence engine, and we could just let that do all the work for us. There are several things I need to point out here. First of all, is that whenever I hire anybody on commission to voice something for me or to do a piece of artwork for me, guess what? I go to them and I pay them to do it. It doesn't mean to say that I couldn't use artificial intelligence to do something like that, but the fact is that the results are done by people who are very largely credited for their skill and craft. And this is something that also should be pretty much involved very, very specifically for this, is that there is actual skill being demonstrated by people who actually be able to do stuff like that. And that what skill is there in an engine that basically makes artwork simply out of using mathematics and geometry and stuff like that? There's no real skill involved in that. The skill is only really down to those who've actually designed and engineered the engine. But if that's the thing I can only really point to, that's just about the only thing I can point to. And so, like I said, it not only does it take skill and craft, but these are people that usually have quite large followings on the internet anyway. And so that actually divulging and actually sort of like coming to mind exactly what my characters are to look like and then be brought into reality is actually really, really interesting, and actually something that makes the entire process worthwhile, because it's exactly how I envisioned it, and it's exactly what I asked for, and it's exactly where we're going from here. So of course, these people want to get paid. That's absolutely, it stands to question. These people aren't just going to design things for free and then think that, bills are just going to stop coming through the door. That idea is ludicrous. And I guess what? It's one of the best quotes from the Bible, ladies and gentlemen. Laborers deserve their wages. And guess what? That's what I do. I pay people who work on stuff that I give them. And that's basically what it should come down to. Because what happens in a year's time, ladies and gentlemen, when other companies decide they can literally cut out labor from thousands of people, build an entire video game with basically 1/100th of the budget, make it look like a AAA video game, and then sell it at full retail price, possibly even in the range of $100 to even $120 if certain projections within the standards of video games are going nowadays. I mean, back in the day, 30 quid for a video game, and this is like nearly 20 years ago we're talking about here. 30 quid would have been absolutely fine and sort of, the standard practice. But nearly 4 times the price is really, really pushing it. Even for games I would like and would actually like to play. Speaking of that, ladies and gentlemen, that the thing about Palworld as well is basically this. What about if the game is fun anyway? Would it matter whatsoever if a game was fun to play, people enjoyed its mechanics, people enjoyed that, there must have been some people who were involved in the process one way or another. For example, there could have been people who beta tested the game, there could have been people who could have been reviewing the game long before release, there could be people who were advertising the game. So it's not exactly as if this entire process of making Palworld was not necessarily simply just stealing, lying, cheating, and stealing. There was some actual legitimacy practices. They must have been done somewhere. And this is not including the multitude of streamers, VTubers who have essentially given the game free publicity by streaming it and taking it from there. I hardly like to imagine that this is just the sort of thing that happens and people are just going to ignore it, unfortunately. But like I said again, if the game's fun to play, then does that matter? Well, that's the sort of thing that a lot of people are a little bit stumped on, is that, yes, if Palworld is fun to play, then is the person who is buying the game going to care necessarily, just as long as they get to play the video game of their choice and stuff like that? And here's the thing as well, and this is like something that you will almost come to an impossible barrier on, is that those who are passionate enough to care about standards and practices and about the rights of laborers and no doubt the people who actually organize these sorts of standards and practices within the gaming space, yes, absolutely they should care, because this has the potential to destroy a lot of people's livelihoods and probably, stack up mountains of debt. And basically, we run into the issue of, how do you justify putting people out of work whilst only the 1% of the business are the ones who will be making all the money? Because this is what it could be all leading to, ladies and gentlemen. The rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, and everybody else gets the shaft. It's pull the ladder up, Jack, and sod the rest. But again, how often can you say the average video game player is necessarily going to be concerned with the actual politics of a major gaming corporation? Now, to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, I have had many, many discussions about this as well. I mean, for example, ever since roughly 2009, I have never once played or bought an Electronic Arts video game, because EA have had a disastrous reputation for skinflinting a lot of their work. And listen, I'm going to share with you guys, just before I finish, a very short story of something that happened to me 6 years ago when I was at university. I once, during an industry development class. Now, the object of these classes were for people coming from like industries such as like from animation, from like video game designing and stuff like that, and even people who write for a living. The object of these classes is that people who are legitimately involved in the industry could come and give you an insight as to what the actual experience of a day in the life would be. And they were also designed to give you legal advice against corporations, studios that try to give you the shaft or try to shortchange you on things. For example, not including people's names in credits is like a big thing that people will fight tooth and nail to actually get the recognition that they deserve. And I remember the point of this is that I once asked somebody during a lecture, and I said, and I think this was concerning a studio in Australia that worked on LA Noire, that they had some back and forth about some people having to work 7 days a week and their names were not even featured on credits. It was something to do with the video game LA Noire. And I just asked, then why don't these people ever form a union? And I was told immediately that they would never allow it. But who were they? I then asked, and interestingly enough, nobody seemed to know. But evidently, they were omnipotent. And then, of course, you have to bear in mind other such factors as well, that Blizzard is like, I've not played Overwatch in like nearly 2 years, and it's a big shame because I miss playing Overwatch. I really do. But at the same time, I'm not sorry for the fact that Blizzard has completely screwed up because of their own mispractices, because of their own disastrous ideas, toxicity, the increasing or rather decreasing level of people playing things like World of Warcraft, Diablo, all the rest of them. It's very, very difficult to actually feel sorry for Blizzard or Activision Blizzard or Ubisoft, because the practices the things that they preach would seem to suggest that as long as they get 100% of the profits, that's all that matters. And therefore, when Bethesda charges $16 on their Atomic Shop store during the fiascos about Fallout 76 for some paint, it's very, very hard to justify if it's even worth feeling sorry for the people at the very top whatsoever. The impression you get from a lot of them is that they are at the very top of the ladder and somehow the most vulnerable men in society. Now, the reason why I want to bring all this to front, ladies and gentlemen, is that I've gotten involved with many, many conversations with people who've had very, very decisive opinions about Palworld. But what I want to say is this. If you are somebody who is extraordinarily passionate about protecting the rights of workers and actually wanting to set a standard in practice where corporations should actually hire people to program, to animate, to voice, to color, to light, if you want to hire actual skilled laborers and workers, then you actually train them, you actually hire them, you actually take on board their ideas. You actually lay out an idea for a video game that perhaps is not necessarily to everyone's taste, but you listen to them, you give them the feedback, you do these things, you play test things, and guess what? There are plenty of people who do this freelance. There are plenty of people who release their stuff for free on the internet. I'm pretty sure they will try and make it on their own if absolutely nobody is going to let anyone else have their say. Trust me, this is not necessarily something particularly very old in this industry, from my experience as well. But again, if you're this sort of person who actually does care for the politics and the standards and practices in video games, then you've got to make yourself known that you are extremely involved in this. You can't necessarily be passive on things like this. Because if you're passive, let me tell you what happens to people who are passive on subject matter like this. The people that are passive are the people who will be heard the less, because you're just sounding as though you're just saying, yes, it's the right. The people think you're saying it because people think you think just by saying it, you're on the side of right. To be on the side of right, ladies and gentlemen, is to commit to what you think is right and then going for it. So if you are one of those people who thinks that the standards and practices and the success of Palworld is fundamental to the things that are wrong about this, then let me know. Speak openly. Open your mind. Tell us perhaps your side of the story. Even to people who disagree with this and say that I'm wrong, let me know. Let's openly talk about this. Because one of the things I absolutely hate to see in this world, ladies and gentlemen, are the people who just say I'm wrong and then will absolutely in no way actually back anything that they say or try to actually fight the arguments that I'm trying to pose. If you care, then actually demonstrate why you care. And then we'll talk and then we'll listen. Just look for something that makes you want to say whether you think this is right or not, and then go from there. I'm not demanding it or anything like that. It's just, it would be nice to have something of a legitimate and serious conversation about stuff like this, because I'm extremely passionate about these sorts of things, but it's also one of the things where I'm kind of glad that I never really got into this industry properly, because the toxicity and the power struggles and the bullshit politics behind quite a lot of people's decisions is the sort of thing that would turn away even the most die-hard of animators. It's just something you can't ignore, because it's basically only ever going to let you down. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next videos. Take care, and bye-bye for now.